Hey guys, welcome back. I've got Coach Will Trujillo with me, and it's his birthday today. So if you see this, even if it's a couple of days later, make sure you wish him happy birthday because it's always a fun time. Um, what we were going to talk about today is some of the moments that aggregated together to help Will learn who he really was through the lens of competing. So obviously, if you don't know this about Will, he's a big-time football player, then a big-time CrossFitter. Now he's coaching big-time athletes. And so there have been a number of moments that have led him to really understand who he is at a much deeper level. So I would love to kind of pick his brain about that concept today and let him just share some of those stories. So, Will, let me first ask you, what is your style when it comes to competing specifically? So not on the coach side, but what's your style as a competitor?
I've always had, when I'm doing well, I've always had an edge. There's there's just like a hard way to say it, like there's just like an element of anger, and like I always feel like whoever, whether it was like during wrestling, like someone was trying to take something from me. The guys on the other football team were trying to like take something from me. Same thing with like CrossFit. Like it's not that I know there's probably zero, well, maybe in football and wrestling, but there's like zero ill will from them to me. But like I just had to have this like fire and anger and push, and like sometimes it came out negatively, like I was super hard on myself, and like people were like, wow, you're really unapproachable when you're competing. But it's like if I didn't have that like self-imposed risk reward, self-imposed level of aggression, like it wasn't going to be any good.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I often ask myself this question with professional athletes, right? Like they're essentially being asked to be role models, but a lot of them probably compete at a better level when they're acting like assholes. You know what I mean? And I get it, right? I think that if you're on the field to win, you do what you need to do within reason, but you do what you need to do to win, I think. So if that is your style, try to put it in context for everybody. How would you act during a weekend competition? Would you be loud? Would you be in people's faces? Would you be really quiet to yourself? What does that look like?
I mean, I wasn't the world's best shit talker because I wasn't that good. So like it's not like I was in the warm-up room telling everyone to, I don't know, get bent or whatever. But yeah, it was a level of intensity. Like I did need time to myself. Like I remember, even at the games on a team, like I remember like knowing if we were going at noon, we had to be like corralled at 11:40 because this is back then, it was smaller, so it wasn't the 2 hour corral that it is nowadays. Um, we had to go back and warm up at 11:10. Like at 10:45, I was like walking by myself, listening to Mike Tyson's pre-fight mantra. It was like Mike Tyson, Five Finger Death Punch, Jay-Z and Kanye. Then I can warm up, right? So it's like it's this intrinsic piece by myself where it's like that's where like the low boil started. And then when you get into the warm up, it's like, and especially like things like, something heavy, something fast, it's like that's where the aggression goes over. It's like how you're like hitting the weights, how you're moving the barbell, that like kind of builds and builds and builds and gives you that chance to like take that pump up hype and put it into visualization. And then it's like there was a lot of like really weird self talk, man. Like, I mean, anyone who's like either lifted with me when I'm like really into it or like has competed against me, like, yeah, Will says some weird shit to himself. Like,
You got to give us an example. You have to give us an example. Like, what might you say to yourself?
I don't know what I can say. Yeah, there's just a lot of really weird self-talk. Like it's
Okay.
evolved for years. I gotta think like I got a kid now. Probably gotta come up with some new stuff. But yeah, it was, and it's funny. Like, where does it come from? Like, dude, I don't know. Like half time, like I don't even hear myself saying it. Like it could, what I'm like yelling at myself, like literally feels like it's in my head.
Hmm.
So it was a weird place, man. Like, uh, I think that kind of adapted from wrestling, where it's like even though it's a team sport, like it's super primal and it's like you versus another guy. So that ability to like get yourself super hyped to do this like really like kind of weird semi-violent act is like you got to find some way to like get yourself ready for that. And that was a practice that I kind of started there. Um, and then in football, it was just, to me, that was always so primal. Like it was as close to a legal fight as you could get. So that was like, um, I enjoyed the noise and the hype and the everything that went into it. Like that was something that always like brought me to the edge and let me do what I needed to do.
How did you know that, whether it be pre warm-up routine or self-talk, how did you know if it was working or helping you? Like, how did you improve on this process?
I think it probably is from coming away from it, so, that's just kind of like how I naturally gravitated. Like everyone knows they develop weird habits. Like you see like some 18-year-old varsity kid and he's doing something, he probably made that up by himself. Like it's just some weird, weird shit we come up with. And so, I had years of like wrestling and football to like develop this and like get into CrossFit, and it just kind of took its own weird turn. And, I remember when I hurt my elbow and like came out and like tried to come back, and I think that's the time like I was kind of starting to like dabble in CCP, and I knew that there was like a more intelligent way to train, a more intelligent way to like pace and approach competitions. And I'm like, okay, I need to be this more like, I don't know, calm and calculated person. And if I went and I came back from that, and like it led to this level of caution where I like lost my edge.
Mm-hmm.
And so like coming back and doing like a few initial competitions and just like not feeling myself, and like my body physically was fine. Like I had zero elbow pain. I was like hitting numbers that were fine, but I just wasn't me. And so like I was able to take those things like, pace workouts and like actually structure better programming, not be like full dummy the whole time, 24/7, 365, but like, stepping away from it and competing poorly, in a, quote unquote calmer fashion was like, dude, this is not you. And that was like my biggest takeaway is like,
what did that feel like, or how did you become aware that you weren't being you? What did that feel like?
I think it's just really being connected to positive experiences, man. Like anyone who's really, so this is like, what's the book? Finding Superman. Is that the book? It's Finding Superman or something Superman. And they define flow state as like, it's like this out of body experience. And like the only way you can really access it is you're at the edge of physical like challenge capacity, like something that's very physically challenging. And there's like this element of danger. And when you look back, you're like, man, like I was in there for this workout. And it's just like this feeling of like being completely disconnected. And that's like the top of your level. And, it's like, I can remember like the biggest hit in my college football career, I was on kick return. And this is back when the wedge wasn't outlawed. And so like you kind of drop back and hook up with 4 other dudes. And then you like sprint 30 yards, you hit their 4 other dudes. And somehow I like broke away, and it was just me and this other guy. I just leveled him. His helmet popped off, like rolled on our sideline, like probably like a $20,000 fine hit nowadays. Like we just helmet to helmet, facing each other. Like one dude was going down, like our crowd just erupts. I didn't feel a thing. And like same thing, like I can remember Granite Games qualifier where it was like balls to the walls for 6 minutes of 7 hang squat clean, 7 bar burpees, and like it didn't feel like I was doing anything. And then until it was all over, and then I died. But it's like when what that like edge level performance, that like that was absolutely as hard as I could hit another human. That was like absolutely as hard as I could go for 7 minutes. And then you try and do it again, and it's not there. Like that like this is not my style. This is not me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but like I've been there. Like I've been to my peak before, and I'm not accessing it now. Like I'm not giving myself the opportunity to be me.
It seems like the level of awareness kind of comes after the event, right? Where it's like you're trying some things, you're seeing what feels pretty good, and then after a workout, an event, a game, etc., that could be a great time to maybe just write some things down as to like what you did, what it felt like, so that you could have more awareness 6 months down the road if you're doing something else. Not to make it too process oriented, right? But I know a lot of people are constantly trying to find that state of mind, that state of physiology that allows them to compete at the highest level. And generally, at least what I have seen from folks is that they're not really paying attention to what gets them there. So it's like, if you're going to try something, awesome, I don't care what it is, but at least think about what you did after the event is over so that you can have a testable process, you know what I mean? A testable style, like you're saying. So as you've moved into a coach, as you've, you know, seen some pretty high level athletes, but you're not on the floor. Well, you were on the floor with them for a while, but you know, you're not on the floor as much. How has your perspective changed on getting to that peak state as compared to when you were the athlete?
You know, I think like prior to that point, I think it's just like what you said. Like one of the important things as developing athlete that probably I needed more of, and is that support staff. You know, I think you need two things to access it, and I'll kind of wrap this around to what I do. Is, you know, you need two things to access it. One is you need challenge. We kind of discussed this off camera. Like you're never gonna access it without the challenge, without being confronted by that moment. Like either step up or have that learning moment. You know, so one is like you have to put yourself out there. You have to do things that are appropriate, that are like challenging and pushing you. And then, like you said, like as far as reflection, I think the challenge is that sometimes like I was doing it individually, and I think maybe my ability to do that is what led me into the coaching role eventually, like led me into that therapist role eventually. But I think as an athlete, you absolutely need a support system. You need somebody to have a close relationship with that's guiding you. And it's like, you know, like I can think of, you know, Jake, the kid I took to the games as a team. You know, he didn't have the best games, but I think it was the second or third to last event was a heavy snatch ladder. And it was finally like, I could see him just like fall out and relax. And it was like, afterwards, it's not like, I was like, oh, you were pushing your knees back, you're locking no, it was like, hey, Jake, dude, that was you, man. What were you doing?
Yeah.
And we just had this talk about, you know, what it was like, you know, from an older coach, a guy who competed, like I could see that he finally wasn't intimidated. He was finally having fun. Like, you know, loose and relaxed was him, and he finally did that. And so, like you said, like having that like meet up, wrap up, and then we went to the last event, the chest to bar Fran bar muscle up bonanza, and again that was this other high scoring event because he had like zoned into like one, he realized he could finally compete with these guys, and two, he realized how he needed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
As a coach, it was like pointing that out to him. And I think, you know, it can be the other side of the coin too, is like, you know, I've seen Tommy do really fucking shitty in events that he's really good in, and that's going backstage and being like, hey, you know, for, you know, going through like our coach strap of like, physically, are you fine? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. It's like, mentally, where were you? And so being able to like, you need to confront him and be like, hey man, I know that's not you. You're not 100% dialed in. What the fuck? And letting him make that self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's, you know, it starts way before that, is you have to have a great relationship so that they can trust you to make those hard conversations, whether it's like, hey, you did great. What did we do? Or dude, you were not dialed in. What do we need to change? So, you know, as a coach, like I think one of the things is like, through my experience, I understand what it's like to be on both sides of that coin. And, you know, a lot of times I probably walked off by myself when I needed someone to be like, dude, that wasn't you. Don't do that again. What are we going to change?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not you know, it wasn't calling Tommy out as a person or Jake out as a person or, you know, any of my athletes out as a person, but it's like, dude, that's not your process.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do to, you know, make your process?
Yeah. So if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who seems to struggle a little bit with who they are on the competition floor, what might you say to them in this moment?
I would ask them, like, what's the most fun you've had training leading up to the event? Right. Because I think that, you know, a lot of competitors are having, you know, better preparation, better lead ups. And so I know they're training real freaking hard leading up to the event. And they probably had some Saturday where, you know, they woke up, they ate their special pancakes, they listened to their music on the way to the gym, you know, drank like coffee from this spot and like, you know, met their bros and like threw down and it was a blast. I was like, what's going through your head then? It's like, okay, what's the disconnect?
Mm-hmm.
This is no different, man. It is 225 pounds at your gym. It's 225 pounds now. You know, it's 21:59, whatever. You know, it's the same thing, man. You know, the disconnect, you know, I would say think about what worked for you in training, man. What worked for you in the journey, because like we all know that, like, you know, competing is this much, everything else is this much.
Yeah.
It's like we got to use that to improve that, and we've got to go back to those positive experiences and like make it happen. Because there's no way that you've gotten to where you are, even if it's your first competition. It was your first time out there, like that's your peak for right now. That's the biggest thing you've ever done. There's still a story before that we can draw from, we can learn from, Nobody calls me as a coach is like, hey, I want to be a competitor. I'm like, okay, I signed you up for something. Go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always something first. There's always something first that is the first few pages of your book. You got to read them.
Oh, I love it. Really well said, Will. I really appreciate you coming on today. I would love to kind of continue this conversation over the next couple months. So thanks for coming on, man. Happy birthday.
Thanks, guys.